I'm not ashamed.
What did Jesus prophesy about Peter? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Matthew on walking through the Bible.
Of his word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Matthew chapter 26. We're going to be reading from verses 31 to 35. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Matthew chapter 26, beginning at verse 31. Then Jesus said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee. Peter answered and said to him, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. Jesus said to him, assuredly I say to you, that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And so said all the disciples. In our last episode, we had Jesus instituting the Lord's Supper. He did this following his last meal with the disciples before being crucified. The Lord's Supper was to be a remembrance of his death. That death, of course, would now occur less than 24 hours later. It consisted of 2 elements, unleavened bread, which represented his body that hung on the cross. It also consisted of the fruit of the vine, which represented the blood that was shed as the price of the new covenant, through which we can receive the remission of sins. Note here that these 2 elements are symbols or representations of the true thing. When we partake of the Lord's Supper, the elements do not become the literal body and blood of Jesus. Doing so would be a form of cannibalism, and God has never condoned the killing and eating of humans in any way, nor the drinking of blood, for the life is in the blood, according to Genesis 9, verse 4. What do these elements represent? They represent the real thing in order to remind us what we are remembering. After the Lord's Supper was instituted, Matthew says that they sung a hymn and went out to the Mount of Olives. The book of John, in chapters 13 through 17, gives us in much greater detail what occurred throughout the entire last evening with the disciples. So we'll leave that discussion for our study of John. But you might ask, why did Matthew leave out all that detail? Because it was not important to his narrative. We have 4 Gospels for a reason, in order that we might have a full picture of who Jesus was and what he taught. But even John admits that he didn't write everything, for such would be impossible. The same goes with Matthew. It is clear that Matthew wanted to cover the instituting of the Lord's Supper, so he simply focused on that. All of this brings us to today's reading. Verse 30 told us that they left for the Mount of Olives. In verse 36, we're told that they arrived there. So today's reading must occur along the way. Remember, they are coming from Jerusalem, the city where the upper room was located, and traveling to the Mount of Olives. Even though the Mount of Olives is not far outside Jerusalem, they would have to cross the Kidron Valley to get there. So there would be plenty of time to discuss some more things among the remaining 11 disciples. One thing that Jesus told them was that all of them would be made to stumble because of him. What Jesus means here is that all would abandon Jesus that night. Judas had already abandoned Jesus by this point, but the rest would as well. They wouldn't all follow him and be with him at his trials. Peter stood without. We don't read of any of the disciples save John, who was at the cross at Calvary. We get that from John 19:26. Even though John would be there, we do read of all of the remaining disciples running away in Matthew 26:56. Jesus predicted that this would be so and would fulfill prophecy, something that has been a constant theme in Matthew. The prophecy that Jesus is quoting is found in Zechariah 13:7, which reads, Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, against the man who is my companion, says the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. Then I will turn my hand against the little ones. Many of the prophets have references to the Messiah in them, but Zechariah especially does. If you recall back 2 lessons to lesson 130 of this series, the prophecy about Judas betraying Jesus was found in Zechariah 11, verse 12. The prophecy about demons being cast out and departing from the land is found in Zechariah 13:2. So that Jesus applies this prophecy in Zechariah to himself should not surprise us, nor Matthew's readers, for it is definitely messianic. Jesus said that the sheep would scatter because the shepherd was struck down. Sheep follow their shepherd, but if the shepherd is attacked and killed, the sheep will run away in order to avoid being killed themselves. That's what Jesus is saying here. Jesus tells them, though, that yes, he will die, but he will be raised again and would meet them again in Galilee. Now Peter, being confident in himself, tells Jesus that even if all the others stumble over Jesus' death, that he would never stumble. It is dangerous to be so confident in ourselves to say that when our life is on the line, we wouldn't do something that we would never do otherwise. Jesus told Peter that indeed he would stumble, and proof of that would be that before the rooster crows, that is before sunrise, Peter would deny Jesus 3 times. Again, Peter said he wouldn't do that. He'd die with Jesus, and the others said the same. That is a noble statement for sure, but foolish, as we'll see in the coming episodes. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Matthew 26, verses 36 to 46, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.